Greetings to all of you, this is Dr. Lisa. In our discussion for today, we will speak about postcolonial approach in international relations. Postcolonialism approach in the field of international relations received as post-positive approach, which developed an alternative theoretical frameworks in international relations, such as constructivism and critical theory. So post-positive approaches in international relations have emerged in response to criticism of positive approaches, which associated with developing a number of important theoretical frameworks, such as realism and liberalism, which are seen according to post-positive as too narrow in their focuses on observable facts and as not adequately taking into account the complexity and contingency of international politics. So post-positivism is a critical theoretical framework that arose as a response to the prevailing narratives and paradigms across various disciplines, including international relations. It offers a distinctive perspective that challenges a traditional understanding of power dynamics, knowledge production, and historical relationship between colonizing and colonized societies. This framework seeks to uncover the obscured narratives, experiences, and voices of colonized and marginalized populations that have historically been suppressed or overshadowed by domination Western discourses. It sheds the light on the intricate dynamics of power exploitations and resistance within the context of colonial and post-colonial interactions. More importantly, it underscores the critical examination of how knowledge is generated, disseminated, and controlled by highlighting how colonial powers often imposed their epistemologies, languages, and worldviews on colonized societies, resulting in the marginalization of indigenous knowledge system and perspectives. So by deconstructing these hierarchies of knowledge, postcolonialism challenges the presumed universality of Western concepts and theories in international relations, where the traditional IR theories frequently center on Western perspectives, leading to Eurocentric biases in understanding global politics. Thus, postcolonialism aims to decentralize the West by incorporating diverse viewpoints from non-Western regions and cultures. This inclusive approach enables a more comprehensive analysis of global issues, taking into account multiple perspectives and historical experiences. It underscores how colonialism and its legacies have shaped unequal power relations, economic disparities, and cultural dominance. It addresses the enduring disparities in power between formerly colonized and colonizing states. Despite achieving independence, many former colonies still struggle to assert themselves in the international system and international arena. For instance, the economic dominance of Western powers, as well as the permanent states of UN Security Council, is seen as a reflection of historical colonialism. The UN Security Council, with its 5 permanent members, China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, and United States, continues to be criticized for its lack of representation from Africa, India, Latin America, and other regions heavily impacted by colonialism. This unequal power distribution affects the global decision-making and conflict resolution.
Council. The contemporary world has moved on significantly from the post-1945 world, which gave rise to the birth of the United Nations and the makeup of the Security Council. The world of 2023 is not the world of 1945. The crisis of the global financial institutions and of global governance under the United Nations system, which were created from the rubble of the Second World War, is a deep crisis. It will continue until a fair system is put in place, a system that reflects the new balances, no longer based on who won or lost the Second World War, but on the major contemporary and future balances.
At the same time, postcolonialism places significant emphasis on identity, culture, and agency in international relations. It highlights how colonial histories have influenced national and cultural identities, and how these identities impact state behavior and interactions. Where traditional international relations often perpetuate Eurocentric biases, potentially hindering a comprehensive understanding of global dynamics. Postcolonialism confronts these biases and encourages scholars to engage within a broader range of theories and perspectives from around the world. As a result, postcolonialism focuses on justice, equality, and rights of the marginalized communities, aligns with the contemporary efforts to address historical injustice and to promote a more inclusive global community by understanding ongoing impact of colonialism.
Indeed, the time is long overdue. If reparations can rightfully be paid to victims of the Holocaust, so reparations can be paid to the victims of the slave trade. And even before these discussions on reparations conclude, the entire continent of Africa deserves a formal apology from the European nations involved in the slave trade for the crimes and damage it has caused to the population, psyche, image, and character of Africans the world over.
In that sense, fundamental theme in postcolonialism is the assertion that Western perceptions of non-Western entities stem from the legacies of European colonization and imperialism. These discourses predominantly conveyed through written or spoken means, constructed non-Western states and peoples as the other or distinct from the West, typically portraying them as inferior.
Disrespect of the Africans also goes back to a lot of the people who work in the US government, not all of them, but there's a significant of them who automatically assume that Africans do not know what they're doing. Africans need help. Africans need to be told what to do. And racism is also at the bottom of it all. We need to address the individuals who are going to be visiting Africa, engaging Africa. They must understand that Africans are equal to them. But when one goes to Africa with a sense of superiority, wherein lies the problem, because you are not going to engage those leaders who are going to come to the table as equals. You go in feeling superior, you come back feeling superior. You get the feeling that there's this sense of superiority, that you Africans, you ought to be glad that we are engaging you. You ought to be glad that we are inviting you to come to Washington. That sense of superiority, it has to change.
We have made the decision that it is not intelligent for 54 of us to go and sit before one gentleman from another place. And I mean, and sometimes we are mistreated.
Yeah.
You know, we are loaded into buses like school kids. You know, and it's not right.
Well, you are some.
So despite the achievement of the indigenous sovereignty in the post-colonial states, the major world powers did not change much since the end of the Second World War, where the ex-colonial powers continue to practice domination and control over the former colonies. One way of doing that is through the economic exploitation, where exploitation and dependency, unequal trade relationships. For example, the extraction of natural resources from developing countries by multinational corporations, often with the support of Western governments, can perpetuate economic inequality and hinder the development of these nations. This is commonly referred to as the new colonialism.
Vomitevole è chi, come la Francia, continua a sfruttare l'Africa stampando moneta per 14 nazioni africane sulle quali applica il signoraggio, facendo lavorare bambini nelle miniere, estraendo materie prime come accade in Niger, dove la Francia estrae il 30% dell'uranio che gli serve a far camminare le centrali nucleari e il 90% dei nigerini vive senza elettricità. Non ci venire a fare lezioni, Macron, perché l'Africa scappa da voi e la soluzione non è spostare gli africani in Europa, è liberare l'Africa da certi europei.
Meaning that the level of economic and military control of Western interests in the global South is in many ways actually greater now than it was under the direct control. So although the era of what we consider it as a former colonial imposition by force and arms is apparently over, an important starting point for postcolonial scholarship is the issue of vast inequality on a global scale. The forms of power that make this systematic inequality possible in the continued domination of subaltern peoples. And with speaking about subaltern, we enter the postcolonial cultural domination, or what is known as cultural imperialism, where the term subaltern was developed by the political theorist Antonio Gramsci. In his work, particularly Prison Notebooks, Gramsci used the term subaltern to refer to the groups of individuals who are marginalized, oppressed, or excluded from the dominant structures of power and authority within a society. The subaltern, according to Gramsci, often lacks the political agency and representation necessary to challenge or change the existing power structure. Their voices are silent or ignored within the dominant discourse. More recently, feminist postcolonial scholars such as Katri Spivak, known for her essay Can the Subaltern Speak?, have extended the concept of subaltern to examine the experiences of colonized peoples and women in colonized societies. The subaltern in this context represents those who have been marginalized and silenced by colonial powers, where she highlighted the challenges of giving a voice to marginalized groups. We can't speak about postcolonialism without referring to Edward Said and his seminal work Orientalism, published in 1978, in which Said has studied the examination of power dynamics, representation, cultural influence, and identity, aligns with the broader objectives of postcolonial scholarship. In the crux of Edward Said's work is the knowledge-power discourse relationship by Michel Foucault, where he suggested that Orientalism is not a pure objective academic discourse. It is subjective discourse, full of prejudice of Western ideology, philosophy, culture, and even colonial interests. Where in his analysis, Said attempts to expose the power dynamics inherent in the relationship between the West and the East. He shows how Orientalism was used as a tool to establish Western dominance and authority. This aligns with the postcolonial theories focus on understanding and challenging power imbalances that persist beyond formal colonialism. So Said's exploration of binary oppositions and stereotypes in Orientalist discourses resonate with the postcolonial efforts to deconstruct essentialist notion about colonized people and cultures. where postcolonial aim to disrupt these binary divisions to knowledge and complexities and diversities of the colonized world. The book's examination of how literature, art, and media perpetuated Orientalist narratives highlights the cultural influence of colonialism. Edward Said's concept highlights how the West constructed and portrayed the East as exalted, inferior, and submissive through cultural representations, and how these colonial representations influenced the way that individuals from the East perceived themselves and their cultures. Black Skin, White Masks, published in 1952, is a groundbreaking work by Frantz Fanon that delves into the psychological effects of colonialism and racism on individuals of colors. The book is a complex exploration of identity, cultural alienation, and internal struggles faced by those living in colonial or post-colonial societies. It was written in the context of widespread colonial rule and racial hierarchy during the mid of the 20th century. Fanon has drawn from his own personal experience and observations to articulate a complex realities of racial discrimination and cultural alienation. The book was published at a time when African and Caribbean nations were striving for independence from European colonial powers. Fanon's work contributed to the broader discourses on decolonization, liberation, and psychological aftermath of colonial rule. He argued that colonial experiences lead to the fractured sense of self among Black individuals. The colonial narratives that presents the white culture and identity as a superior caused the people who were under their colonization to internalize feelings of inferiority, leading to what he called it as a racial epidemial schema. This schema refers to how individuals perceive themselves based on the color of their skin. So Fanon discussed the desire of a Black individual to be recognized and validated by the white colonizers, who let them reach a point where they often measured their own worth through the approval of white society. This desire for recognition perpetuates a cycle of dependence and self-negation.
I'm usually called a native when I'm in Zimbabwe by the white people. And Toynbee says, when we Europeans call people natives, we take away from them anything which suggests that they are human beings. They are to us like the forest which the Western man fells down, or the big game that he shoots down. Indicates the sort of mental outlook that those who settled in our country had about us. We were a natural resource for exploitation, the same as the trees, same as the grass, the gold mines, the gold under the ground, the same as the wood, everything, just a natural resource.
He discussed the psychological alienation experienced by the colonized, who are caught between their own cultural heritage and the ideals imposed by the colonizer. This results in identity crisis as individuals grapple with conflicting notions of self and struggle to reconcile their true identities with imposed stereotypes. Fanon made a call to an action, the need for decolonization, not only on a political level, but also on a psychological and cultural level. He envisions a world where individuals can reclaim their authentic identities and overcome the internalized effects of colonialism. Now, applying Fanon's work on international relations provide a postcolonial lens to understanding global interactions, identities, and conflicts, and the ongoing struggles for justice and agency in the international arena. The Richard of the Earth is another seminal work by Frantz Fanon, was written during a period of significant decolonization efforts across Africa, Asia, and Caribbean. Where Fanon's experience as a psychiatric in Algeria, his involvement in Algerian War of Independence, and his observations of the broader decolonization movement inform the book's content. The work was published shortly before Fanon's death in 1961. In this book, Fanon aims to offer a comprehensive analysis of the process of decolonization and its far-reaching implications. His project is to provide a theoretical framework that addresses the psychological, political, and cultural dimensions of decolonization, where he begins by examining the brutalities of colonial rule and the dehumanization of colonized peoples. He describes how the colonizer exploit and marginalize the colonized, leading to a profound psychological and physical suffering. Fanon also touched upon the question of liberation, arguing that the struggle against colonialism necessitates a complete transformation of both colonizer and the colonized. Similar to his previous work, Fanon explores the psychological impact of colonialism. He discusses the colonial mentality that continues to affect the mental well-being of the colonized, even after political independence. The book delves into the trauma, inferiority complex, and self-doubt ingrained in the minds of those who have been subjected to colonial oppression. A controversial aspect of the book is that Fanon's advocate for violence as a means to achieve decolonization. He argues that violent resistance is a necessary response to the violence perpetuated by colonial powers. He criticized nonviolence approaches as often being co-opted by colonial powers to maintain control. Fanon's stance on violence reflects his belief that colonized must confront their oppressors on equal terms to reclaim their humanity and agency. At the same time, he emphasizes the importance of developing a collective national consciousness among the colonized. He argues that this consciousness helps the individuals move beyond their internalized feelings of inferiority and enables them to unite in pursuit liberation. Nationalism becomes a tool for empowerment and means of reclaiming a cultural identity. He also pointed out to the challenges faced by the newly independent nations in building stable and just societies. He criticized the potential pitfalls of mimicry, where postcolonial governments imitate the structures and values of the former colonizer. Fanon stressed that the need for authentic culture and economic transformation to avoid perpetuating the same power dynamics. Another scholar has spoken about postcolonial is Homi Bhabha. He is a prominent postcolonial theorist whose work has made significant contributions to the field of international relations, particularly through the exploration of cultural identity, hybridity, and the dynamics of representation. While Bhabha's primary focus on the literature and cultural studies, his ideas have been widely applied to international relations, enriching our understanding of power, identity, and global interactions. Homi Bhabha's postcolonial theories focused on cultural identity, representation, and hybridity, where hybridity is the idea that identities of colonized and colonizer are constantly in flux and mutually constituted. This is missed in Positive's IR scholarship. His ideas offer a lens through which we can analyze identity, politics, diplomacy, and global justice in a world shaped by colonial histories and ongoing struggle for self-determination. Homi Bhabha has also introduced the concept of ambiguity and mimicry in postcolonial discourses, where he explores how colonized subjects negotiate their identity by adopting and adapting elements of the colonizer's culture, while at the same time subverting and criticizing it. This has implications for understanding how postcolonial nations navigate their relationship with the former colonial powers in the realm of international politics. Having spoken about the most prominent scholars addressed postcolonial theory in IR, let's now take a few examples to make this approach relevant to international relations. In West Asia and Africa, for instance, the Sykes-Picot Agreement during the First World War divided the Ottoman Empire's Arab territories between France and Britain, which significantly shaped the modern Middle East. The region's ongoing conflict, such as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or even the ethnic tensions all over the region, can be traced back to these colonial-era divisions, where the broader end-state formation highlights how arbitrary colonial borders often ignored ethnic, religions, and tribal divisions, leading to enduring conflicts and challenges to state sovereignty. In both West Asia and Africa, colonial powers drew borders that didn't align with the existing social and cultural components. Similarly, the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885 led to the partitioning of Africa among European powers, often without regard of indigenous populations. This resulted in enormous border disputes, ethnic conflicts, and challenges to effective governance in the post-colonial era. On the other hand, look at the exploitation of resources in the colonized regions, which continues to affect the economies and development prospects of both Africa and West Asia. The extraction of minerals, including diamonds and rare metals from African countries, by multinational corporations has often led to resource-driven conflicts and hindered economic development in these nations. In addition to economic partnership, trade agreements and foreign aid from Western countries often come with conditions and power imbalances that some argue perpetuate dependency and inequality in Africa. Now let's conclude our lecture for today by speaking about some limitations of postcolonialism as an approach in international relations. First one, some scholars like Robert Cohen has criticized postcolonialism for its lack of engagement with mainstream international relations theories and its perceived neglect of power and state-centric analysis, while others said that postcolonialism is a primary descriptive framework, and it is criticized for not providing a clear perspective solutions to the problems it identifies. Critics also argued that it is often lack of policy guidance and has questioned postcolonialism's ability to be practical in policy making and its ability to explain the complexities of international relations. While other scholars have argued that postcolonialism emphasizes on identity and cultural factors, can overshadow other important factors in international relations, such as economics, security, and state interest. So scholars like David Lake has argued that postcolonialism tends to downplay the importance of material interests and power politics in international relations, which he sees as a crucial element. So that was all for today. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't hesitate to share this content with your friends, which might be interested in international relations. If you find this content informative, please subscribe and enable the notification button for more discussions. See you next time.